I spent 10 years eating tuna and working 80-hour weeks to buy the quietest place in Morro Bay. But 24 minutes after I got my keys, my parents pulled up to the curb with a moving truck and a lie. They were smiling. My sister Bryn was crying, and they acted like stealing my sanctuary was a favor they were doing for me. I didn't scream. I just unlocked the door and started planning the war. The signing of the deed felt less like a purchase and more like an exorcism. I sat in a conference room that smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee, watching the attorney slide a stack of documents across the mahogany table. My hand did not shake as I picked up the pen. I had practiced this signature for years, refining the loops and the pressure until it looked like the autograph of a woman who could not be bullied. 33 years old. That was the number on my driver's license. But in my chest, I felt ancient. I had spent the last decade working in finance compliance, a job that required me to look at numbers, find the lies hidden inside them, and strip them bare. It was a career built on suspicion. It paid well. It paid well enough that, after 5 years of eating oatmeal for dinner and wearing the same 3 blazers until the linings tore, I was buying the Penthouse at the Spire. The Spire was the newest, quietest building in Morro Bay. It was a needle of glass rising out of the coastline, overlooking the gray-blue Atlantic. My unit was on the top floor. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that faced the ocean, soundproof walls, and a private elevator code. It cost more money than my father had made in his entire life. "Congratulations, Ruby," the attorney said, handing me a heavy set of keys. "You are officially a homeowner." I took the keys. They were cold and heavy in my palm. I did not smile. Smiling felt premature. I just nodded and put them in my purse, right next to my inhaler. I did not have asthma, but I carried it anyway. Old habits died hard. I walked out of the office and into the cool October air. I checked my phone. No notifications. That was exactly how I wanted it. I had told almost no one. In the world of the Powell family, good news was not something to be celebrated. Good news was a signal flare. It told them where the resources were. If I got a promotion, my car tires would mysteriously go bald, and my father would need a loan. If I got a tax refund, my mother would suddenly develop a medical condition that insurance did not cover. Success, to my parents, was a community asset. I got into my car and drove to the waterfront to meet Tessa. Tessa Lang was the only person who knew the address. We had met in college, bonding over our mutual hatred of group projects, and she was the only friend I had who understood why I did not go home for Christmas. She was waiting for me at a corner table in a bistro that served oysters and white wine. When she saw me, she did not scream or wave. She just raised her glass. "Did you do it?" she asked. I sat down and placed the keys on the tablecloth. "I did it." Tessa let out a long breath. "The Penthouse. The fortress of solitude. How does it feel?" "Terrifying," I admitted. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. I feel like I committed a crime." "You bought a home." "Ruby," Tessa said, pouring me a glass of wine, "you did not rob a bank. You worked 80-hour weeks for 10 years. You missed weddings. You missed vacations. You ate tuna out of the can. This is not a crime. This is the reward." I took a sip of the wine. It tasted sharp and clean. "I know," I said, "but you know how they are. If they find out I have this much space, they will fill it. They hate a vacuum. They are 3 hours away in New Jersey." Tessa said, "They do not have your address. You are safe." I nodded, but the knot in my stomach did not loosen. "I have a rule," I said. I wrote it down in my journal this morning. "No family favors, not one. If they ask for $5, the answer is no. If they need a place to crash for one night because their heat went out, I will pay for a hotel, but they do not cross the threshold. Once they get inside, they never leave. They are like black mold. Tessa, you think you scrubbed it all away, and then you see a spot behind the wallpaper." Tessa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You are the compliance manager, remember? You are the one who tells the CEOs no. You can tell Elaine and Graham Powell no. I want to believe that." I said, We finished our drinks and watched the sun go down over the water. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I was the only person in charge of my environment. I imagined waking up on a Sunday morning to absolute silence. No guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments about my weight or my career or my lack of a husband, just the ocean and the light. My phone buzzed on the table. I looked down. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. Mom. I stared at it. The phone vibrated against the wood, a buzzing insect I could not swat away. Answer it, Tessa whispered. If you don't, she will call 10 times. Just get it over with. I picked up the phone. Hello? Ruby! My mother's voice was bright, airy, and completely unrecognizable. It was her telephone voice, the one she used for pastors and bank tellers. I was just thinking about you. Your father and I were talking about how hard you have been working lately. We are just so proud of you. Honey. My grip on the phone tightened. My mother did not call to tell me she was proud. She called to tell me who had died or who was suing us. Thanks, Mom, I said, keeping my voice flat. That is nice to hear. We know we have been hard on you, she continued, the sweetness dripping like syrup, but we know you are doing big things. We just want you to be safe. You are in the city now, right? It can be so dangerous for a young woman all alone. I am fine. Mom, Marrow Bay is very safe. I know, but humor your poor mother. Do you have a new address yet? We just want to update the emergency contact list. You know, just for safety. If something happens to us, or to you, we need to know where to send the ambulance. The trap was so clumsy I almost laughed, but there was a sliver of fear there. Too, if I refused, it would become a fight. A fight would lead to drama, and drama was the fuel they ran on. If I gave it to them, I could silence the request. They were 3 hours away. A zip code was not a key. I am at the Spire, I said, on Ocean Avenue. But I'm still moving in. So it is chaotic. Oh, the Spire. That sounds fancy. Well, you be careful moving those boxes. Do not hurt your back. We love you. Ruby. She hung up. I looked at Tessa. She wanted the address for safety. Tessa frowned. That is weird. Elaine is never that brief. She didn't ask for money? No. She didn't ask about your love life? No. She just wanted the address. Tessa swirled her wine. Be careful. Ruby. That was too easy. 2 days later was move-in day. I had hired a professional moving company because I refused to owe anyone a pizza and a beer for carrying my sofa. I arrived at the Spire at 9 in the morning with a single box of personal items, my laptop, my coffee maker, and my expensive sheets. The movers were scheduled to arrive at 10. I pulled my car into the circular driveway. The building was magnificent, glass and steel, reflecting the morning sun. The doorman, a man named Henry whom I had met during the tour, stepped out to greet me. But he was not looking at me. He was looking at something behind him, in the lobby. I put the car in park and stepped out. The air smelled of salt and exhaust. I walked toward the revolving doors, my heels clicking on the pavement. I felt a surge of pride. This was mine. I had bought this. Then I saw the truck. It was not a professional moving van. It was a rental truck, the kind you rent for $29 a day plus mileage. It was parked haphazardly near the loading zone, taking up 2 spaces. My stomach dropped. I knew that truck. I didn't know the license plate, but I knew the energy of it. It looked cheap. It looked temporary. It looked like trouble. I pushed through the revolving doors and stopped dead in the center of the lobby. They were there. My father, Graham, was standing by the concierge desk, leaning over it with the casual arrogance of a man who owned the place. He was wearing his good khakis and a polo shirt that was slightly too tight. My mother, Elaine, was sitting on a velvet bench, flipping through a magazine, and next to her, looking like a tragic heroine in a movie about beautiful people with sad lives, was my younger sister, Bryn. Bryn was 27. She had never held a job for longer than 6 months. She was an aspiring everything, aspiring actress, aspiring model, aspiring influencer. Currently, she was an aspiring victim, "Ruby!" my mother cried out, dropping the magazine. She stood up and opened her arms. "You are here. We beat you." I stood frozen. The lobby was cool and quiet, utterly indifferent to the circus that had just pitched a tent in its center. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice was calm, but my pulse was hammering in my throat. Graham turned around from the desk. He had a piece of paper in his hand. "There she is," he boomed. "The homeowner. We were just telling this nice young man that we are the welcoming committee." I walked over to them. I did not hug my mother. I did not look at my father. I looked at Bryn. Bryn was surrounded by luggage, and not just weekend bags. There were 3 hardshell suitcases, distinctively patterned with a famous designer logo. There were garment bags. There was a large box that looked like it contained a television. And leaning against the bench was a framed painting, a large abstract canvas that used to hang in Bryn's old apartment. "Why do you have a moving truck?" I asked. Bryn looked up at me. Her eyes were rimmed with red, perfectly applied to look like she had been crying for hours without ruining her mascara. "Oh, Ruby," she whispered. "It is a disaster." Elaine stepped in, placing a hand on my arm. She squeezed it, her fingers digging in slightly. "It is terrible. Really. Bryn's roommate, that girl, the one with the nose ring, she just bailed, left in the middle of the night. The landlord said Bryn had to pay the full rent or get out immediately. It was a lease violation or something. We didn't want to worry you. So you brought her here?" I said, "Well, where else was she going to go?" Graham said. He stepped forward, his physical presence dominating the space. He was a big man who used his size to end arguments before they started. "We figured, Ruby has this massive new place. What is family for? She just needs a fresh start. Just for a couple of weeks until she gets on her feet. A couple of weeks." The phrase hung in the air. In the Powell dictionary, a couple of weeks meant 6 months. It meant forever. "No," I said. The silence that followed was sharp. The concierge, a young man named David, looked down at his computer screen, pretending to type. Graham laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "What do you mean?" "No. I mean no," I said. I looked at Bryn. "I am sorry about your roommate. That sounds stressful, but you cannot stay here." "Ruby," Elaine hissed. Her smile was gone. "Do not be cruel. Your sister is in crisis. She has nowhere to go. She is sitting in a lobby with everything she owns." I looked at the luggage again. I looked at the framed art. "Who packs art for a 2-week emergency stay?" I asked. Bryn flinched. "I just didn't want it to get stolen." She mumbled, "It is valuable. And the printed building rules?" I pointed to the paper in Graham's hand. Graham crumpled the paper slightly. "Just wanted to be respectful. I downloaded the PDF from the building site. Wanted to know the rules about freight elevators, so we didn't cause a scene. I already told the guy here we need the freight car for an hour." "You reserved the freight elevator?" I asked. "Well, I tried to," Graham said. "He said he needed the owner's permission, so tell him it is fine." My mind was racing. They had planned this. They had downloaded the handbook. They had rented a truck. They had packed her entire life. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was an invasion. If I let her upstairs, she would never leave. She would establish residency. In this state, after 30 days, she would have tenant rights. I would have to evict my own sister. I cannot do that. I said, "My lease." I stopped myself. I didn't have a lease. I owned it. My HOA rules have strict guest policies. I cannot have long-term guests without board approval. It takes weeks. Graham's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer. I smelled his cologne, a mixture of musk and stale tobacco. "Don't lie to me, Ruby. You own the place. You make the rules." "I do own it," I said. "And the rule is no." I turned to the concierge. "David, I do not authorize any move-in for this unit other than the professional movers scheduled for 10 o'clock. David looked relieved to have a direct order. "Yes, Ms. Powell. Understood." I turned back to my parents. "I will pay for a hotel for Bryn for 3 nights. There is a Marriott down the street. I will put it on my card. We can sit down at dinner tonight and figure out a long-term plan for her. But those bags are not going up to my apartment. The air in the lobby seemed to vibrate. Graham's face turned a mottled shade of red. His jaw worked, grinding his teeth. For a second, I thought he was going to yell. I thought he was going to make the scene he claimed he wanted to avoid. I braced myself for the explosion. But then, the anger flickered out. It was replaced by something worse, disappointment. He shook his head, looking at me like I was a stranger who had just kicked a puppy. "Wow," he said softly. "Just, wow. I knew you were cold, Ruby. I knew you thought you were better than us because you made a little money. But I didn't think you were heartless. I am not being heartless." I said, "I am setting a boundary." Elaine started to cry. It was a soft, weeping sound that echoed in the high ceilings. I failed. She sobbed into a tissue. I raised 2 daughters, and one of them won't even open her door to the other. Bryn looked at me. Her eyes were dry now. There was no sadness in them, just a flat, calculating assessment. She looked at the marble floors, the gold trim on the elevators, the doorman. She wanted this. She wanted the lifestyle that came with the address. "Fine," Bryn said. She stood up. "If Ruby doesn't want me, I don't want to stay. I don't want to be where I'm not wanted." She grabbed the handle of her Louis Vuitton suitcase. "Let's go to the hotel." "Dad," she said, "I am tired." Graham glared at me one last time. "We will take the hotel," he said, "since you are offering. But don't expect us for dinner. I don't think I can stomach it." They gathered their things. It took them 5 minutes to load everything back into the rental truck. I stood in the lobby and watched them through the glass walls. I watched my father slam the back door of the truck. I watched my mother get into the passenger seat, wiping her eyes, when they drove away. I did not feel relief. I felt sick. David, the concierge, cleared his throat. "I am sorry about that. Ms. Powell, it is not your fault." I said, "Please make a note on my file. No access for anyone, not even them, especially not them. I will put it in the system right now." I went up to the penthouse. The elevator ride was smooth and silent. When the doors opened into my foyer, the light was blinding. The ocean stretched out before me, vast and indifferent. I walked into the living room, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. I stood by the window and looked down at the street. I could not see their truck anymore. I spent the day unpacking. I put my clothes in the walk-in closet. I arranged my books on the built-in shelves. I made my bed with the expensive sheets. I tried to feel the joy I had felt in the attorney's office, but it was gone. The apartment felt different now. It felt compromised. At 8 o'clock that night, my phone rang. It was a local number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Miss Powell? This is Milo Granger. I am the property manager for the Spire." My heart skipped a beat. "Yes, Milo. Is everything okay?" "I wanted to call you personally," he said. His voice was professional but confused. "I just got a notification from the night desk. A woman claiming to be your sister was here about 20 minutes ago." I gripped the phone. "What?" "She didn't try to go up." Milo said, "She was at the front desk. She told the night concierge, who wasn't on duty this morning, so he didn't know about the incident, that she was an authorized family member. She asked about the procedure for adding an occupant to the unit. She specifically asked for a spare key fob." "She asked for a fob?" I repeated. "Yes. She gave your full name and your unit number. She said you were busy unpacking and had sent her down to handle the paperwork. Did he give her anything?" I asked, my voice rising. "No," Milo said. "Thank goodness. He told her that for any new occupant, the owner has to be present to sign the affidavit. She said she would come back with you tomorrow. Then she asked for a copy of the parking garage schematic. She said she needed to know where your assigned spot was." I closed my eyes. They hadn't gone to the hotel to sleep. They had gone to regroup. "Do not give them anything." I said, "Milo, listen to me. They are not authorized. They are not residents. If they come back, I want them trespassed. I understand." Milo said, "I have flagged your unit in the security software. It will flash red if anyone types in your unit number. I just thought you should know. It was odd. She was very insistent. She knew a lot about the building protocols. Thank you, Milo. I hung up. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of tap water. My hands were trembling. This wasn't just a family guilt trip. This was an operation. Bryn asking for a fob meant she intended to come and go without me knowing. Asking for the parking schematic meant they were planning to park a vehicle here long term. Maybe the rental truck. Maybe something else. I opened my laptop. I needed to distract myself. I opened my email. There, at the top of my inbox, was a message from an email address I did not recognize. complianceops44gmail.com. The subject line was FWHO, a welcome packet, the Spire. I frowned. I hadn't requested a welcome packet. I had received the physical binder at closing. I clicked on the email. It was a forward. The original sender was the general HOA info box, sent to Compliance Ops 44. I opened the attachment. It was the standard PDF of the building rules and regulations, but it had been modified. Someone had used a PDF editor to highlight specific sections in yellow. I scrolled through the document. Highlight 1. Section 4.2. Guest access. Owners may have guests for up to 14 consecutive days without registration. Highlight 2. Section 5.1. Emergency key access. Immediate family members may be granted emergency access keys upon proof of relation and owner incapacitation. Highlight 3. Section 8.4. Subletting. Subletting is strictly prohibited, but immediate family occupancy is not considered subletting provided no rent is exchanged. I stared at the screen. The burner email address, the highlighted loopholes. They were researching my defenses. They weren't just trying to move in. They were trying to find the legal cracks in my ownership. They wanted to know exactly how long Bryn could stay before the HOA kicked her out. They wanted to know how to get a key if I was incapacitated. I sat back in my chair. The beautiful glass-walled penthouse suddenly felt very fragile. The walls were not thick enough. The locks were not complicated enough. My parents were not just disappointed parents. They were adversaries, and they had been planning this since the moment they found out I was looking for a house. I took a deep breath. Panic was what they wanted. Panic made people make mistakes. Panic made people say, "Fine, just stay for one night." I would not panic. I was a compliance manager. I dealt with fraud. I dealt with bad actors. I dealt with paper trails. I opened the settings on my phone. Step 1. Change contact preferences. I set my phone to send all calls from my parents and Bryn directly to voicemail. Step 2. The paper wall. I opened a new document on my computer. I typed the date at the top. I wrote down everything that had happened today. The time of arrival, the license plate of the truck. I remembered it from when they drove away. The statements made by Graham. We need the freight car. The statements made by Bryn. Lease violation. I saved the document as incident_log_001. Then I drafted an email to my parents. Subject: regarding Bryn's housing mom and dad. I am writing this to be clear so there is no confusion. I cannot host Bryn at my apartment. The building rules are strict, and I will not risk my standing with the HOA. I have paid for the Marriott for 3 nights. After that, you will need to help her find a new apartment. I am willing to review her budget with her, but I will not be providing housing or acting as a guarantor for a lease. Please do not come to the building again without an invitation. Security has been instructed to turn away unannounced guests. Ruby. I read it over. It was cold. It was corporate. It was perfect. I hit send. I turned off the lights in the living room and stood in the dark, watching the city lights of Marrow Bay twinkle below me. They looked like stars, but I knew better. They were just people, thousands of them, fighting for their own space. I had mine, and I was going to keep it. I walked to the front door and engaged the deadbolt, then the secondary lock, then the chain. Let them come. I thought, I have paper. I have rules. And I am not the daughter they remember. I went to bed, but I slept with my phone in my hand. The penthouse was silent, but it was the silence of a held breath. The war had started. The silence in my penthouse was not the silence I had paid for. I had imagined a silence that felt like a deep breath, the kind that comes after a long run when your lungs finally expand fully. Instead, the silence felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. It was a silence that was waiting to be broken. For 3 days, I did not leave the apartment except to buy groceries. I worked remotely from my kitchen island, my laptop open to spreadsheets that detailed regulatory breaches for a mid-sized bank in Ohio. But my eyes kept drifting to the front door, to the 3 locks I had engaged. My phone, which I had placed face down on the marble counter, vibrated every hour on the hour. The assault was coordinated. It was a rhythm I recognized from my childhood, a pincer movement designed to crush resistance through sheer exhaustion. My mother, Elaine, was the soft front. Her messages were long, rambling blocks of text that arrived in the morning. They were masterpieces of revisionist history. Ruby, I woke up thinking about you. I know things were tense in the lobby, but we are just so worried. We want to heal this family. You have been so distant for years, and we feel like you are punishing us for mistakes we made when you were a child. Can we just start over? We love you so much. She used words like healing and safety as weapons. She framed my boundaries as aggression and her intrusion as love. If I did not reply, I was the one refusing to heal. I was the one holding a grudge. My father, Graham, was the hard front. His texts were short, arriving in the afternoon like court summonses. Your sister is in a hotel room eating takeout while you have 3 empty bedrooms. This is not how we raised you. Responsibility is not just about paying bills. Ruby, it is about taking care of your own. Do the right thing. And then there was Bryn. Bryn operated in the dark. Her messages came late at night, usually after 11 o'clock. She did not guilt-trip me like Elaine or command me like Graham. She played the victim. I heard a noise outside my door just now. I am so scared here. Ruby, the hotel hallway smells like smoke, and I do not feel safe. I just want to be somewhere with a lock I trust. And then, 20 minutes later, a follow-up. It must be so nice up there. I bet you can hear the ocean. It seems so big for just one person. Though, don't you get lonely with all that empty space? That last line was the hook. So big for one person. It was an accusation dressed as sympathy. It suggested that my ownership was wasteful, a gluttonous hoarding of square footage that rightly belonged to the collective. I did not reply to any of them. I archived the messages into a folder I had named Evidence. On Thursday morning, the intercom buzzed. I froze. I checked the video monitor. It was Milo Granger, the property manager. He looked grim. I buzzed him up. Milo was a man who took his job seriously. He wore suits that were perfectly tailored, and he treated the Spire not like a building, but like a sovereign nation. He stood in my foyer, holding a manila folder. I am sorry to disturb you, Ms. Powell, he said, but we had another incident this morning. Who was it? I asked. A man, Milo said. Mid-50s, heavy set, very confident. He walked right up to the concierge desk. David was on shift again and tried to hand over a document. He said it was an occupancy update form for Unit 44B. That is my father. I said, my stomach tightened. What did he submit? He didn't submit anything, because I intercepted him. Milo said, he tried to tell David that you had already signed it, and he was just dropping it off for processing. He had a folder with him. He looked official. He acted like he owned the place when I asked to see the signature on the form. He pulled the paper back and said it was confidential family business and that he would leave it in your mailbox. Did he put it in the mailbox? No. I told him that our mailboxes are behind a locked door and only residents have keys. He argued with me for 5 minutes about federal mail laws, which he was quoting incorrectly, by the way, and then he left. But Ms. Powell, he was not acting like a visitor. He was acting like a landlord. I walked over to the window. The ocean was gray and choppy. He is trying to create a file. I said, he wants a paper trail that shows he has been handling administrative tasks for this unit. That is what I thought, Milo said. He wanted David to log the interaction. He actually asked David, "Are you writing this down?" It felt like he was building a case. I turned back to Milo. "Thank you for stopping him." "I will keep stopping him," Milo said. "But you need to know." He asked about the deed. He asked if the title was held in a trust or in your personal name. That is public record. Of course, anyone can look it up at the county clerk. But the fact that he was asking the concierge, he is looking for leverage. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on my neck. My father was not a lawyer, but he was a grifter. He knew how to bully systems until they broke. After Milo left, I went into my office. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet and pulled out the heavy binder I had received at closing. The closing had been a blur. It had taken 3 hours. There had been hundreds of pages to initial and sign. My hand had cramped. I had been so focused on the interest rate and the amortization schedule that I hadn't paid much attention to the boilerplate forms, the privacy disclosures, the emergency contacts, the insurance waivers. I opened the binder. I flipped past the deed, past the mortgage note, past the title insurance. I found the form labeled Owner Information Sheet. It was filled out in blue ink, my handwriting. Name, Ruby Powell. Employer, Omnicore. Financial. I scanned down to the bottom, emergency contact information. I stared at it. There, in the boxes I remembered leaving blank because I did not have an emergency contact I trusted, were names. Primary contact, Graham Powell, father. Secondary contact, Elaine Powell, mother. The handwriting was not mine. It was blocky, all caps. It looked like the handwriting of the paralegal who had been organizing the papers that day. I closed my eyes, trying to replay the memory of the closing. My parents hadn't been there. They didn't know the attorney. How had this happened? Then I remembered the phone call during the closing. The paralegal, a young woman named Sarah, had stepped out to take a call. She had come back in looking flustered, just verifying some missing info for the file. She had said, she must have called the number listed on my old rental application, which my father had co-signed 10 years ago. Or maybe my mother had called the firm, pretending to be me, to helpfully provide the missing details. However they did it, they were in the file. They were listed as my emergency contacts on the official closing documents. This did not give them ownership. It did not give them a right to a key, but it gave them a foothold. If something happened to me, or if they claimed something happened to me, they were the people the authorities would call. I grabbed my car keys. I needed to see Hannah Voss. Hannah Voss was a real estate attorney who looked like she wrestled sharks for leisure. She had short, steel gray hair and an office that smelled of old leather and expensive perfume. She listened to me without interrupting. I showed her the highlighted HOA packet. I told her about the attempt to get a fob. I told her about the emergency contact form. She leaned back in her chair and took off her glasses. "This is aggressive," she said. Her voice was dry. "Usually, when families want money, they just ask for a loan. This is tactical." "Is the emergency contact form a problem?" I asked. "Can they use it to get in? Legally?" "No," Hannah said. "Emergency contacts are for emergencies. It does not grant power of attorney. It does not grant tenancy. But," she held up a finger, "it creates ambiguity. If your father shows up with a locksmith and says, 'My daughter is inside and not answering. I am her listed emergency contact,' a sympathetic locksmith might open that door. If he shows up at the management office saying you are in the hospital and he needs to water your plants, and they see his name on the official file, they might give him a key. That is what I was afraid of." I said, "It is called administrative leverage." Hannah said, "They are trying to look like residents before they are residents. They are trying to normalize their presence in the building's ecosystem. If the doorman sees them 5 times a week, eventually he stops asking for ID. If the property manager gets 10 emails from them, eventually he starts treating them like owners. They are trying to wear down the system's immune response. What do I do?" "You harden the target," Hannah said. She pulled a fresh form from her drawer. "We revoke the emergency contact authorization immediately. You sign this. explicitly stating that Graham and Elaine Powell are to have no access and no information regarding your property. We send it via certified mail to the management company, the HOA board, and the security firm. We make the no official. I signed the paper. My hand was steady. One more thing, Hannah said. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. You need to be prepared for the escalation. When legal barriers go up, emotional barriers usually come down. If they cannot get in through the side door, they will try to blow up the front porch. They will try to embarrass you. They are already doing that. I said, Not yet. Hannah said, Private guilt is one thing. Public shame is another. Just be ready. Hannah was right. The escalation began 4 hours later. I was back in the penthouse, installing a second security camera in the hallway, when my phone started buzzing with a different kind of notification. It wasn't a text. It was a social media tag. I opened the app. Elaine had posted a photo on Facebook. It was an old picture of me, maybe from when I was 7 years old. I was wearing a sundress, looking up at the camera with wide, trusting eyes. The caption read, It breaks a mother's heart when children forget who raised them. We sacrifice everything, our bodies, our finances, our dreams, to give them wings, and when they fly, sometimes they fly so high they look down on the people who built the runway. Praying for humility and remembrance today. Family is all we have. Family first, heartbroken, ungrateful. It was vague enough to be plausible deniability, but specific enough to be a dagger. The comments were already rolling in. Oh, Elaine, I am so sorry. Is this about Ruby? Kids these days just take and take, sending prayers. You were always such a good mother. Then came the direct messages. My Aunt Linda. Ruby, I saw your mother's post. I do not know what is going on, but you need to call her. She's devastated. You only get one mother. My cousin Sarah. Hey, heard you bought a mansion and won't let your sister crash? That is pretty cold. Even for you. My Uncle Bob. Your dad sounded really down on the phone. Said he tried to visit and you kicked him out. Don't be that person. Ruby. Don't be the rich girl who forgets where she came from. I sat on the floor of my hallway, surrounded by wires and screws. I felt a wave of nausea. She was building a narrative. She was painting a picture of me as the villain, the cold, wealthy, heartless daughter who had abandoned her suffering family. She was weaponizing the community against me. If I didn't let them in, I wasn't just saying no to a room. I was confirming the story she had written. I wanted to reply. I wanted to scream. I wanted to post a screenshot of the highlighted HOA rules and the burner email, but I knew that would be a mistake. Engaging with the narrative only validated it. It turned it into a debate. I put the phone down. I focused on the screw in my hand. I turned it into the wall, righty-tighty, secure the perimeter. 30 minutes later, the concierge called. Ms. Powell, you have a delivery. I'm not expecting anything. I said, It is a large package. David said, It was just dropped off by a courier. It is addressed to... Well, it is addressed to Bryn Powell, but the unit number is yours. I felt the blood drain from my face. Send it up, I said. 10 minutes later, I was staring at a large cardboard box in the center of my living room. The label was clear. To Bryn Powell, care of Ruby Powell, The Spire, Unit 44B. It was a gift. I could tell by the wrapping tape. I cut it open. Inside was a high-end espresso machine, chrome, heavy, expensive, the kind that cost $500. There was a card, to Bryn, for your new fresh start. We know how much you love your morning lattes. May this new home bring you the peace you deserve. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the gleaming machine. It wasn't a gift. It was a marker. By sending mail to Bryn at my address, they were establishing residency. If Bryn received mail here, packages, letters, bills, she could use that as proof of address. She could take this label to the DMV. She could take it to a bank. They were planting a flag on my doorstep. And the note? May this new home bring you peace. They were speaking it into existence. They were ignoring my no so completely that it felt like gaslighting on a cosmic scale. They were acting as if the move-in was a done deal. As if my resistance was just a temper tantrum that had already passed. I felt a sudden, violent urge to throw the machine through the window. I wanted to hear the glass shatter. I wanted to watch the chrome appliance plummet 44 stories and smash into the pavement, but I didn't. I was a compliance officer. I did not smash things. I audited them. I took a picture of the box. I took a picture of the label. I took a picture of the card. Then I taped the box back up. I wrote, "Return to sender. Recipient, not at this address," in thick black marker on the top. But I did not send it back yet. I left it in the hallway. A physical reminder of the siege. I needed to stop playing defense. Defense was exhausting. Defense was waiting to be hit. I needed to know why this was happening now. Why was Bryn so desperate? Why was her lease terminated? Why were my parents pushing this hard? This fast? It wasn't just about control. It felt like desperation. I went to my computer. I opened a browser. I logged into a background check service I used for work. It wasn't strictly legal to use it for personal reasons, but I didn't care. I typed in Bryn Powell. I pulled her rental history. There it was, her last address, an apartment complex in Jersey City. Status, terminated. Reason, breach of lease, repeated disturbances. I dug deeper. I found a forum for tenant complaints in that specific building. I searched the building name and influencer. I found a thread. Warning to anyone on the 4th floor. The girl in 4B is a nightmare. She films in the hallway at 2 a.m. with a ring light. She blocked the fire exit last week to do a clothing haul video. Management has fined her 5 times. Another comment. She tried to film me in the laundry room without asking, said I was background texture. I called the cops. And another. She listed the apartment on Airbnb for a meet and greet party that got raided. I sat back. She hadn't lost her lease because her roommate bailed. She hadn't been a victim of a cruel landlord. She had been evicted because she was a nuisance. She had turned her apartment into a set, and her neighbors into involuntary extras. And now she wanted to do the same thing to the spire. She didn't just want a room. She wanted the backdrop. She wanted the floor-to-ceiling windows, the marble counters, the ocean view. She wanted to upgrade her content. My penthouse wasn't a sanctuary to her. It was a studio, and my parents knew. They had to know. They were helping her rebrand. I looked at the phone. It was 7 o'clock. I needed to see her face. I needed to see if she could lie to me when I knew the truth. I called Bryn. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was small, breathless. "Ruby? Where are you?" I asked. "I am at the hotel." She said, I am watching TV. It is so lonely here." I drove to the Marriott. I met her in the lobby. She was wearing sweatpants that looked carefully distressed and a hoodie that was slightly too big. She looked young. She looked vulnerable. "Ruby," she said, standing up. "Did you change your mind?" I sat down across from her. I kept my voice gentle. "Bryn, I want to help you." I said, "I really do." Her eyes lit up. A flicker of triumph. "Oh, Ruby, thank you. I promise I won't be in the way. I just need—" I held up a hand. "I want to help you find an apartment." I said, "A real one. I will pay the deposit. I will help you look." The light in her eyes died instantly. "What?" she said. "You need your own space." I said, "You are an adult. Living with your sister isn't the answer. I found some listings in town. Nice places. 1-bedroom units." "I don't want a 1-bedroom in town," she said, her voice sharpening. "I want to be with family. Why are you being so difficult?" I leaned in. "I know about Jersey City." "Bryn?" She froze. "I know about the filming." I continued. "I know about the hallway complaints. I know about the Airbnb party." Her face changed. The vulnerability vanished. The little sister mask dissolved, revealing something hard and ugly underneath. Her mouth twisted into a sneer. "So?" she snapped. "People are uptight. They are jealous. I am building a brand. Ruby, you wouldn't understand. You sit in an office all day looking at spreadsheets. I am creating something. You got evicted." I said, I was targeted, she hissed. And now you are doing the same thing. You have that massive castle in the sky, and you are hoarding it. Do you know what I could do with that light? Do you know the engagement I could get? There it was. The truth. It is just a background to you. Isn't it? I said. It is an asset, she said, her voice rising. Why shouldn't the family benefit from it? You didn't get there alone. Ruby, Mom and Dad paid for your braces. They paid for your car insurance when you were 17. You owe us. I stood up. I saw the people in the lobby looking at us. I realized then that keeping them out was not working. As long as they were outside, they could spin the story. They could claim I was the monster. They could forge documents. They could create a mythology of victimhood. And I would always be the villain in the tower. I needed to change the dynamic. I needed to bring the infection into the lab where I could study it. I needed them to commit their crimes where I could record them. I looked at Bryn. I saw the greed in her eyes. It was a hunger that would never be satisfied. Okay, I said softly. She blinked. What? Okay, I repeated. I am not letting you move in. But maybe I am being too hard. Maybe we need to talk this through properly. She narrowed her eyes. What are you saying? Come for the weekend. I said, you, Mom, and Dad. Friday night to Sunday morning. A supervised visit. We will talk. We will see if we can coexist. Her suspicion warred with her desire. Desire won. Really? She asked. Really. I lied. But there are rules. No moving boxes. Just overnight bags. She smiled. It was a shark's smile. Okay, she said. We will be there. I walked out of the hotel. My heart was pounding, but my mind was cold. I wasn't inviting them into my home. I was inviting them into a trap. I got into my car and drove back to the Spire. I had 24 hours to prepare. I needed more cameras. I needed voice recorders. I needed a contract. If they wanted to turn my life into a reality show, I would make sure I was the one editing the footage. I walked into my penthouse and looked at the expensive espresso machine still sitting in the hallway. I picked it up and carried it into the kitchen. I plugged it in. I made myself a cup of coffee. It tasted bitter. I took a sip and stared at the front door. Come in. I thought, come in and show me exactly who you are. I treated Friday like a military operation. I took the day off from work. But I did not rest. I spent 8 hours turning my penthouse into a courtroom that looked like a home. I started with the hardware. I had gone to a specialty electronics store in the city, a place that sold bug sweepers and hidden cameras to paranoid executives. I bought 4 small devices that looked exactly like USB wall chargers. They were high-definition cameras with high-fidelity audio, legally compliant for use in my own home as long as they were in common areas where there was no reasonable expectation of privacy. I plugged one into the outlet in the foyer, facing the front door. I plugged one in the living room, angling it toward the seating area. I placed one in the kitchen, covering the island, and I placed the last one in the hallway that led to the bedrooms, just outside my home office. I tested the feeds on my phone. The picture was crisp. The audio picked up the hum of the refrigerator. Next, I secured the perimeter. I installed a heavy-duty keyed lock on my bedroom door. I did the same for my office. I took my physical files, my deed, my tax returns, my bank statements, and locked them in a fireproof safe, which I then bolted to the floor of my closet. I felt a sickening combination of adrenaline and shame as I did this. A woman should not have to bolt her life down to protect it from her mother and father. A woman should not have to wire her kitchen for sound to prove that her sister is a liar. But as I tightened the screws on the office lock, I remembered the emergency contact form. I remembered the highlighted HOA rules. They were not coming to visit. They were coming to conquer. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I sat at my kitchen island and drafted a document. I called it the guest agreement. It was 1 page. Simple language. It stated that the guests were staying for 48 hours only. It stated that they would not duplicate keys. It stated that they would not bring in furniture. It stated that they had no claim to residency. It was ridiculous. It was insulting. And it was absolutely necessary. At 5 o'clock, The buzzer rang. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my blouse. I checked the camera feed one last time. Send them up, I told the concierge. When the elevator doors slid open, the first thing I saw was a wall of luggage. It was not just the designer suitcases from the other day. It was more. There were plastic bins. There were garment bags. There was a folding table. Graham was pushing a hotel luggage cart that he must have borrowed or stolen from the lobby. Hello? Family. I said. I stood in the center of the foyer, not moving to help. Graham pushed the cart into the hallway, the wheels squeaking on the hardwood. Made it. He grunted. The traffic on the bridge was a nightmare. Elaine followed him in, carrying a potted orchid. She looked around the apartment, her eyes scanning the high ceilings, the floor-to-ceiling glass, the minimalist furniture. She did not look at me. She looked at the real estate. It is breathtaking, she whispered. Just breathtaking. You have so much light here. Ruby, it is a waste to keep the curtains closed. The curtains are open. Mom, I said. Bryn came in last. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, like she was dodging paparazzi. She lowered the glasses and looked at me. Hey, Ruby, she said softly. Thanks for doing this. I looked at the luggage cart. I thought we agreed on overnight bags. I said, that looks like a relocation. Graham waved a hand dismissively. Oh, don't start with the rules already. It is just storage. Bryn's storage unit is across town, and they jacked up the rates. We figured we would just leave a few boxes here in your spare room. You are not using it anyway. I am using it. I said, it is my guest room. And I'm not a storage facility. Just for the weekend, Graham said, pushing the cart further in. We will sort it out on Sunday. Don't be petty. Ruby, let your sister put her things down. I stepped in front of the cart. Leave it in the foyer. I said. Graham stopped. He looked at me, his face flushing slightly. The foyer? He said. People will trip over it, then take it back down to the truck. I said, those are the options. Foyer or truck. Nothing goes into the bedrooms. Elaine walked over and placed the orchid on my entry table. She adjusted the leaves. Graham, just leave it there for now, she said. Ruby is stressed. We don't want to overwhelm her. She turned to me with a pitying smile. We know how you get when your routine is disrupted. Honey, we will work around you. I walked to the kitchen island and picked up the single sheet of paper. Before we settle in, I said, I need everyone to sign this. Graham laughed. A booming, fake sound. Sign what? A guest book? A guest agreement? I said, I slid the paper across the marble. Graham picked it up. He read it. His smile vanished. Is this a joke? He asked. You want your parents to sign a contract to sleep in your house? It is just clarity. I said, it confirms that you are guests, that you are staying until Sunday morning, and that you understand the building rules regarding keys and noise. Elaine came over and read over his shoulder. Ruby, this is legal language. No claim to tenancy. Immediate revocation of license to occupy. This is cold. This is something you give to a stranger, not your mother. I looked her in the eye. Strangers do not try to forge my signature on occupancy forms. I said. The room went silent. Bryn looked at her shoes. Graham's jaw tightened. I don't know what you are talking about. Graham said. I think you do. I said. But let's put that aside. If you're just visiting for the weekend, signing this should not be a problem. It only becomes a problem if you plan to stay longer. Graham glared at the paper. He looked like he wanted to rip it in half. But he knew that if he did, I would call the concierge and have them removed. He was a bully, but he was a pragmatic one. Fine, he snapped. If it makes you feel powerful. He uncapped a pen from his pocket and scribbled his signature. He passed it to Elaine. She signed it with a heavy sigh, shaking her head the whole time. Bryn signed it without looking. I took the paper. I folded it. I put it in my pocket. Welcome. I said, who wants tea? The evening was a masterclass in passive aggression. We sat in the living room, drinking Earl Grey from my bone china cups. Elaine could not sit still. She wandered around the room, touching everything. She ran her hand along the back of my sofa. She tapped the glass of the window. You know, she said, standing by the dining area, If you took down that wall near the kitchen, you could make this a massive open concept. It feels a little chopped up right now. I like the wall, I said, and this furniture, she continued. It is very sharp. Not very cozy for a family. If you got a big sectional, we could all sit together. It is designed for me, Mom, I said. Graham was sitting in my favorite armchair, testing the firmness. So, Ruby, he said, we were talking in the car. Since we're going to be in and out this weekend, getting food, maybe showing Bryn around the neighborhood, it would make sense if we had a spare key, just so we don't have to buzz up every time. I took a sip of my tea. The camera in the corner was recording. I only have one fob. I said, come on, Graham said. You can't tell me a place like this doesn't give you a spare. What if you lose yours? I don't lose mine, I said. And the building charges $500 for a replacement. It is a security measure. I will buzz you in. Graham set his cup down hard on the coaster. You are treating us like prisoners, he said. I am treating you like guests. I replied, guests do not need keys. Bryn spoke up for the first time. She was curled up on the rug, scrolling through her phone. Ruby, she said, her voice light and conversational. You are acting really weird about money. I looked at her. I am? Yeah, she said. The $500 for the key. The way you talked about the move-in costs, it is like you are hoarding it. I worked for it. Bryn laughed softly. Did you? I mean, fully? What is that supposed to mean? She looked up at me, her eyes wide and innocent. I was just telling Mom and Dad about Aaron. You remember Aaron, right? My stomach dropped. Aaron was an ex-boyfriend from 5 years ago. It had been a bad breakup, a financial disaster. He had stolen from me, and I had nearly gone bankrupt trying to fix the mess he left. I had never told my family the details. I had told them we just grew apart. What about Aaron? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Well, Bryn said, playing with the fringe of the rug. I heard that when things got bad with him, Mom and Dad actually helped you out. They sent you that check for rent when you were broke? I stared at her. They had sent me $200. Once, it hadn't even covered the late fee on my electric bill. They sent me $200. I said. Bryn shrugged. Well, money is relative, right? To them, that was a lot. They saved you. And now you are sitting here in a penthouse, acting like you are a self-made woman, and you won't even give your dad a key. It just feels ungrateful, like you owe the family for keeping you afloat. I looked at Graham and Elaine. They were watching me, nodding slightly. They were accepting this new narrative, in their minds. The $200 had grown into a lifeline that entitled them to equity in my future. I realized then that Bryn had been digging. She had probably gone through old mail at their house, or maybe she had found an old journal I left behind years ago. She was weaponizing my lowest moment to build a debt I could never repay. I did not argue. Arguing about the amount would only validate the premise that a debt existed. Interesting perspective. I said. I stood up. I'm going to check my email. Make yourselves at home. I walked down the hall to my office. I unlocked the door, went inside, and locked it behind me. I checked the camera feed on my phone, in the living room, the moment I left. The dynamic changed. Graham leaned forward. Did it work? He whispered. Bryn shook her head. She is a stone wall, but she flinched when I mentioned Aaron. Keep pushing, Graham said. She breaks eventually. She always breaks. Elaine stood up. I'm going to find the bathroom, she announced loud enough for the walls to hear. I watched on the screen as Elaine walked down the hallway. She passed the bathroom. She paused outside my bedroom door. She tried the handle. Locked. She frowned. She continued down the hall to my office door. I sat in my chair, 5 feet away from the door, and watched the handle turn. It jiggled. Once, twice, then a soft knock. Ruby? Elaine's voice was sweet. I opened the door. Elaine jumped back, her hand clutching her chest. Oh, you scared me. What do you need? Mom, I was looking for a phone charger, she said. My battery is dying. I thought you might have one in here. There is a charger in the kitchen. I said, oh, right. She tried to peer past me into the room. It is so dark in there. What are you hiding? It is an office. Mom, confidential work documents. She smiled, but her eyes were cold. You were always so secretive. Even as a little girl, you used to lock your diary. We are your parents. Ruby, you don't have to lock doors against us. I stepped out and pulled the door shut behind me. The lock clicked. I keep my work secure. I said, it is a requirement of my job. I walked her back to the living room, but as I walked, I noticed something. The drawer of the hallway console table, the one where I used to keep my keys before I bought the safe, was slightly ajar. I knew for a fact I had closed it. She hadn't just been looking for a charger. She had been sweeping the perimeter, looking for loose paper. That night, after they had retreated to the guest room, Graham and Elaine took the bed. Bryn took the air mattress I provided. I lay in my bed and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. It was Milo. Milo. Ms. Powell. I am documenting this as requested. At 8:15 p.m., the concierge received a call. Female voice. Claimed to be you. She knew your security question, mother's maiden name. She asked to register a permanent guest for parking spot 44B. She said the vehicle would be arriving on Monday. A moving truck. I felt a chill go through me. Mother's maiden name. That was easy for them. They were the source of the data. Ruby. Did he approve it? Milo. No. I had flagged the account. He told her she needed to sign in person. She got angry and hung up. But Ruby, she sounded very convincing. If I hadn't flagged it, he would have given her the spot. Ruby. Thank you. Milo. Keep the log. I put the phone down. Monday. A moving truck. They weren't planning to leave on Sunday. They were planning to bring the rest of the stuff on Monday. They were stalling. The weekend visit was just the beachhead. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Tessa. Tessa. Call me. Now. I put in my earbuds and dialed her number. Ruby, Tessa said, her voice low. I figured out why Bryn is desperate. Tell me, I whispered. I have a friend who works in nonprofit compliance in Jersey City. Tessa said, do you remember that community garden project Bryn raised money for on TikTok last year? Vaguely. I said, she said she was revitalizing a park. Yeah, well, the park is still a dirt lot, Tessa said, but the money is gone. She raised about $15,000. The donors started asking questions. Apparently, the funds were transferred to a personal account. She claimed it was for administrative fees and consulting. Oh my God. I said, it gets worse, Tessa said. The State Attorney General's office has opened a preliminary inquiry. It is not public yet, but subpoenas are coming. Ruby, she is not just broke, she is hiding. She needs an address that isn't connected to her old life. She needs to look stable. If she can show she's living in a luxury penthouse, it makes her look solvent. It makes the theft look like a misunderstanding. She is using me as a shield. I said, she is using you as a money laundering front. Tessa corrected. If she moves in, she brings that investigation to your door. Do not let her stay. I hung up. I sat in the dark. The pieces were fitting together. The urgency, the desperation, the fresh start. Bryn was running from the law, and Graham was trying to build her a fortress using my bricks. I needed to see what they were doing. I opened the camera app on my phone. I switched to the living room feed. It was dark, but the camera had night vision. Bryn was awake. She was standing by the window, the city lights illuminating her profile. She was holding her phone up, filming. I zoomed in. She was speaking softly. I turned up the volume on my earbuds. So yeah, guys, it has been crazy, Bryn was whispering to her followers. But I am finally here. The new place it is a lot of work, but we are making it home. I can't wait to show you the studio setup. My sister is helping me decorate. We are going for a whole new vibe. Family first. Always. She panned the camera around my living room, capturing my furniture, my art, my view. I watched as she typed a caption. The screen was blurry, but I could make out the words, New Beginnings at the Family Penthouse. She hit post. She was squatting digitally. She was claiming the territory online before she claimed it physically. I needed to provoke them. I needed to force Graham to show his hand before Monday. I needed to know exactly how far he was willing to go. Saturday morning, I woke up early and made coffee. I made enough for everyone. I set the table with pastries I had bought. I acted like the perfect hostess. When they came out, they looked groggy. Graham went straight for the coffee. "Did you sleep well?" I asked. "The mattress is a little firm," Elaine said, "but the quiet is nice." We sat down. I waited until they were eating. "I have some bad news," I said. They all looked up. "What is it?" Graham asked. I sighed. I looked down at my cup. "It is the mortgage. I was reviewing the numbers last night. The variable rate adjusted. It is much higher than I expected. Honestly, I am not sure if I can hold on to this place. I might have to sell." It was a lie. I had a fixed-rate mortgage. I had locked it in months ago. But the reaction was instantaneous. Graham dropped his fork. "Sell?" he said. "You can't sell. You just got here. It is too expensive." "Dad," I said, "I made a mistake. I am drowning in the payments." Graham leaned forward. His eyes were sharp, calculating. He wasn't worried about me losing my home. He was worried about losing his asset. "Don't panic," he said. "You don't have to sell. You just need to restructure." "I don't know," I said. "The bank is being difficult. Listen to me." Graham said. He lowered his voice. "I know a guy, a private lender. He does bridge loans, refinancing for high-value properties. He can get you a better rate." "A private lender?" I asked. "Yeah," Graham said. "He is discreet, no credit checks, but he usually requires a co-signer, someone with business experience." "Like you?" I asked. Graham shrugged, trying to look modest. "I could help. I could put my name on the refi. We could wrap the debt into a new LLC. I have done it before. It would protect the asset." He was salivating. He was offering to help by putting his name on the title. A bridge loan from a guy he knew was a classic predatory move. He would trap me in high-interest debt, co-sign to get legal standing, and then when I defaulted on the shadow loan, he would claim the property. He didn't just want Bryn to live here. He wanted the deed. And if we do that— Graham continued, gaining confidence, "We could classify Bryn's room as a rental unit. It gives you tax write-offs. It helps with the income verification. It solves everything." I looked at him. I looked at Elaine, who was nodding encouragingly. I looked at Bryn, who was smirking. They were vultures. They saw a wounded animal, and they were circling. I put my cup down. "No," I said. Graham blinked. "No what?" "No private lender?" I said. "No LLC, and no co-signing." Graham's face darkened. He realized I had baited him. He realized I wasn't distressed. I was testing him. "You are being stupid." "Ruby," he said. His voice was no longer the helpful father. It was the heavy, threatening voice I remembered from my teenage years. "You are sitting on a gold mine, and you are too proud to let people help you mine it." "I am not mining it." I said. "I am living in it." He stood up. He loomed over the table. "You think you are so smart," he said. "You think you can just sit up here in your glass tower and look down on us? We are your family. We know things about you. What do you know?" "Dad?" I asked. "I know you are fragile," he said. "I know you crack under pressure, and I know that if this gets ugly, you are the one who has the most to lose. You have a reputation. You have a compliance job that requires a clean record. Are you threatening me?" I asked. "I am telling you reality," he spat. "Family doesn't need permission. Ruby, we have options. We have rights. And if you try to push us out, we will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of daughter you are." He leaned in close. "You are going to let Bryn stay," he said. "And you are going to give me a key, or else this mortgage problem you made up? It is going to become real, because legal battles are expensive. Ruby, and I have nothing but time." I sat very still. He had shown his hand. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about a fresh start. It was a hostile takeover. I looked at the camera in the corner. The little red light was not visible, but I knew it was rolling. "Okay," I said softly. Graham smiled. He thought I had surrendered. "Good," he said. He sat back down. "Now, pass the sugar." I passed the sugar. I didn't tell him that okay didn't mean yes. It meant I have enough evidence. I watched him stir his coffee. I looked at Bryn, who was already texting someone, probably her followers. Monday was coming, but they wouldn't make it to Monday. I had the audio. I had the video. I had the forged documents. The courtroom was in session, and the defense had just rested. The digital clock on my oven read 2 in the afternoon. My parents and Bryn had gone out to lunch, leaving the penthouse in a state of suspended animation. Their luggage was still in the foyer. A blockade I had to step around to get to the elevator. They had invited me to join them at a bistro down the street, but I had declined. Claiming a headache, the headache was real, but it was not biological, it was structural. I took the elevator down to the lobby. I needed to see Milo. When I entered the management office, Milo stood up immediately. He closed the blinds that faced the lobby, sealing us in a glass box of privacy. He did not offer me water or coffee. He offered me a single sheet of paper. "This was scanned into our system 40 minutes ago," Milo said. "David found it in the drop box when he came on shift." I looked at the document. It was a standard form. Request for authorized occupant status. The unit number was filled in. 44B. The occupant name, Bryn Powell. The relationship, sister/tenant. And at the bottom, there was a signature, Ruby Powell. I stared at the ink. It was blue ballpoint. The loop of the R was slightly too wide. The Y tailed off to the right, whereas mine always curled straight down. It was a good forgery, the kind that would pass a casual glance from a doorman. But it was not mine. I did not sign this. I said, my voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "I know." Milo said, "I compared it to your lease addendum. The pressure points are wrong. But Ms. Powell, this form grants full access, keys, packages, amenities. If David hadn't flagged the account like you asked, the system would have processed this automatically. We would have cut a fob for your sister by 5 o'clock. I touched the paper. It felt grimy, as if the dishonesty had a physical texture. "Who dropped it off?" I asked. "We checked the cameras," Milo said. He turned his monitor toward me. The footage was grainy but clear. It showed the front desk at 10 in the morning, while I was upstairs showering. A man in a beige windbreaker walked up to the drop box. He looked over his shoulder, slid the paper in, and walked away. It was my father. He had gone down for a cigarette. He had told me, "Just getting some fresh air." Ruby. He had come downstairs, forged my name, submitted the document, and then come back up to drink my coffee and offer to refinance my mortgage. "Can I keep this?" I asked. "I need the original for the file." Milo said, "But I made you a certified color copy." He handed me the copy. I folded it carefully and put it in my purse. "Do not process it," I said. Obviously. Milo said, "But Ms. Powell, you need to know something else." He asked the weekend porter where the security server room is located. He said he was an IT consultant and was just curious about the building's infrastructure. My blood ran cold. "Lock it down." "Milo," I said, "no one enters that room without my authorization. I am way ahead of you," Milo said. "But you need to get them out. This is not a visit anymore. It is a breach." I drove straight to Hannah Voss's office. It was Saturday, but she had agreed to see me. She charged $400 an hour for weekends, and I would have paid double. I laid the forged document on her desk. Hannah put on her glasses. She studied the signature for a long time. Then she looked up at me. "This is a felony," she said. "Forgery in the 2nd degree. Attempted identity theft. You could have him arrested." I looked at my hands. The idea of seeing my father in handcuffs made my stomach turn, not because I loved him, but because I knew what would happen. Elaine would collapse. Bryn would live-stream it. I would become the daughter who put her father in prison. The narrative would shift from Ruby is cold to Ruby is a monster. I cannot arrest him. I said, "Not yet." Hannah nodded. She understood. She leaned back in her leather chair. "Here's the thing about this document," she said. "It was not meant to fool a forensic analyst. It was meant to fool a concierge. It is a tool of administrative leverage." "What do you mean?" "If the building accepts this," Hannah explained, "Bryn gets a key. Once she has a key, she has established residency. Once she has residency, you have to evict her. That takes months. During those months, they grind you down. They make your life so miserable that you agree to whatever terms they want just to make the noise stop. So the forgery is just a wedge." I said, "Exactly. And the most dangerous part isn't the document itself. It is the pressure campaign that follows. They want you to comply voluntarily. They want you to say, 'Fine, she can stay,' so that this piece of paper never has to be tested in court. They are betting on your exhaustion. Ruby, they are betting that you are too polite to call the police on your own father." I felt a surge of anger. They were using my own decency against me. I am not that polite. I said, "Good," Hannah said, "because you are going to need to be something else. You are going to need to be cold." She opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. "You need to know who you are fighting," she said. "I have a private investigator I use for high-net-worth divorces. His name is Caleb Rusk. He is expensive, but he is invisible. If your father is forging documents, this is not his first time. You need to know what else he is hiding." I took the card. "Caleb Rusk. Call him," Hannah said. "Find out why they really need this apartment. Because nobody commits a felony just for a guest room." I returned to the penthouse at 4 o'clock. The atmosphere in the apartment had shifted. It was no longer the tense silence of a standoff. It was the heavy, suffocating air of a hospital waiting room. Elaine was sitting on the sofa, holding a cup of tea. She looked at me with eyes that were brimming with tears. "Ruby," she said softly, "come sit down." I stayed standing by the island. "I am fine here. Please, honey," Elaine said. "We are worried about you." Graham walked in from the balcony. He looked calm, paternal. He didn't look like a man who had just committed a crime. "We have been talking." "Ruby," Graham said, "we think you are under a lot of stress." "I am under stress," I said, "because there are 4 people in an apartment meant for 1. Elaine shook her head sadly. "It is not that. It is your behavior, the locks on the doors, the cameras, the way you are hoarding information. It is not healthy. Ruby, you are acting paranoid." I felt the gaslighting wash over me. It was a familiar tide. When I was 16 and found my father's gambling slips. They told me I was hallucinating. When I was 20 and asked why my college fund was empty, they told me I had imagined the money existed. "I am not paranoid," I said. "I am careful." Elaine reached into her purse. She pulled out a card. "I called a friend of mine," she said. "She is a therapist, a crisis counselor. She specializes in women who have trouble connecting with reality." She placed the card on the coffee table. "We think you should talk to her," Graham said. "You are seeing enemies where there is only family. You are inventing threats. It makes us wonder if you are emotionally unsafe to be living alone." I stared at the card. It was not a referral. It was a threat. If they could label me as unstable, they could challenge my competency. If they could paint me as having a breakdown, they could argue that they needed to move in to take care of me. It was the ultimate inversion, the invaders posing as the caretakers. "You think I am unsafe?" I asked. "We think you are fragile," Elaine said. "You always have been. You push people away because you are afraid. We just want to hold you close." I looked at the camera in the corner. I hoped it was capturing the specific frequency of her voice, the fake sweetness that coated the poison. "I do not need a therapist," I said. "I need you to respect the guest agreement you signed." Graham sighed. "The agreement again. You are obsessed with paper." "Ruby, paper doesn't matter. Blood matters. Paper matters to the police," I said. Graham's eyes narrowed. He took a step toward me. "Are you going to call the police on your mother?" he asked. "On the woman who gave you life? Because you think she loves you too much?" I held his gaze. I am going to go to my room. I said, dinner is on your own. I turned and walked down the hallway. I heard Elaine's sob behind me. It was a theatrical sob, designed to pierce walls. As I unlocked my bedroom door, I felt a hand on my arm. It was Bryn. She had followed me down the hall. Her face was dry. She wasn't crying. "Can I come in?" she whispered. "Just for a second." I hesitated, then opened the door. I let her in and closed it. Bryn looked around my bedroom. She looked at the king-sized bed, the silk curtains, the ocean view. "It is nice," she said. "What do you want?" "Bryn?" She sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at me, and for the first time in days, she dropped the act. She didn't look like the victim or the brat. She looked tired. "They are not going to stop," she said. "I know. Dad has a plan," she said. "He always has a plan. He's going to keep pushing until you crack. He will embarrass you at work. He will call your boss. He will park the truck in the driveway and refuse to move it. He thrives on this. Ruby, he loves the fight. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can make it stop," she said. I looked at her. "How?" "Let me stay," she said. "Officially. Put me on the lease, or whatever. The deed. Give me the spare room. If you do that, I will handle them. I will tell them I am settled. I will tell them to back off. I know how to manage Dad. I am the only one who can talk him down." She leaned forward. "It is a trade, Ruby. You give me the address, and I give you your peace. I will be the buffer. You won't even know I am here. I will just be a ghost." I looked at my sister. She was offering me a protection racket. "Pay me, and I will save you from the monster I brought to your door." It was a brilliant strategy. It made her look like an ally. But I knew the truth. If I let her in, the monster wouldn't leave. The monster would just have two heads. "You are threatening me." I said, "No," Bryn said. "I am negotiating. You want them gone. I want a place to live. We can both win." I stood up. "Get out of my room," I said. Bryn's face hardened. She stood up. "You are making a mistake," she said. "You think you can win this with rules, but they don't play by rules. You are going to lose, Ruby, and when you do, I will still be here." She walked out. I locked the door. My hands were shaking. I pulled out the card Hannah had given me. Caleb Rusk. I dialed the number. I met Caleb Rusk at a diner 3 towns over. I did not want to risk being seen in Marrow Bay. Caleb was a small man who looked like an accountant. He wore a gray suit and drank black coffee. He had a laptop open on the table. "Ms. Powell," he said, "you were right to call. What did you find?" I asked. Caleb turned the laptop toward me. I traced the burner email that sent the highlighted HOA packet. He said, it originated from a server farm in Delaware, but the recovery address was linked to a co-working space in Newark, specifically, a rental office used by a company called GJP Consulting. GJP. I said, "Graham James Powell." "Exactly. Now, GJP Consulting has no website, no employees, no product, but it has bank accounts." He clicked a few keys. A spreadsheet appeared. "Your father is moving money," Caleb said. "Not a lot, but enough to trigger flags if anyone looked closely. He takes deposits from small businesses, contractors, landscapers, local shops, supposedly for consulting. Then he moves the money through a chain of digital wallets and withdraws it as cash or pays vendors that don't exist. Is it money laundering?" I asked. "It looks like it," Caleb said, "or high-level tax evasion. But here's the kicker. He is currently under audit. The IRS sent a notice to his last known business address 3 months ago." "The audit?" I whispered. "He is scrambling," Caleb said. "He needs to show legitimate overhead. He needs to show a physical office that matches the prestige he sells to his clients. A residential address in New Jersey doesn't look like a high-end consultancy, but a penthouse in Marrow Bay? That looks like success." I stared at the screen. "He wants the address for the business." I said, "He wants more than that." Caleb said, "He wants the asset. If he can establish residency. He can list the penthouse as a corporate satellite office. He can claim he pays rent to you, even if he doesn't, to write off the expense. He can entangle your property with his chaotic finances. And Bryn? I asked. Bryn is the cover. Caleb said. She is the noise. She provides the emotional urgency. My daughter needs a home. It distracts you from the fact that he is setting up a shell company in your living room. Also, if Bryn lives there, he has a legitimate reason to be coming and going with boxes of documents. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just entitlement, it was predation. My father looked at my home and saw a laundry machine for his dirty money. And the forgery? I asked. Desperation. Caleb said, the audit clock is ticking. He needs to secure the location before the investigators close in. He needs that address on a utility bill or a lease agreement by the end of the month. That is why they are pushing so hard. I closed the laptop. Thank you. Caleb, I paid him in cash. I drove back to the spire. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the highway. I was done playing the victim. I was done waiting for them to leave. They wanted a meeting? I would give them a meeting. I walked into the Penthouse. They were eating pizza in the living room. Graham had his feet on the coffee table. They looked up when I entered. They expected me to be angry. They expected me to yell about the pizza box on the marble. Instead, I smiled. It was a tight, tired smile. But it was a smile. I am sorry. I said. Graham put down his slice. Sorry for what? For earlier. I said. For the hostility. I went for a drive. I thought about what you said. Mom, about being paranoid. Elaine's face softened. Oh, honey, you see? We just want to help. I walked over to the island. I am not saying yes to the move-in. I said, not yet, but I am willing to consider it. Bryn sat up straighter. Really? But not like this. I said, not with the shouting and the sneaking. If we are going to do this, if we are going to live together, we need structure. We need to air everything out. I am listening, Graham said. He looked triumphant. He thought he had broken me. I want a formal family meeting. I said, tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, here in the apartment. We can do that, Elaine said. But not just us, I added. I want a mediator. Graham frowned. A what? A neutral third party, I said, to help us communicate. Someone who can write down the agreement so there is no confusion later. If you agree to this, and if the meeting goes well, we can discuss the spare key. Graham exchanged a look with Elaine. They saw an opening. They saw a daughter who was capitulating, who just needed a little face-saving ceremony before handing over the keys. Fine, Graham said. Who is the mediator? That therapist friend of your mother's? No, I said. Someone I choose. Someone professional. As long as it gets us to a solution. Graham said, we are in. Good. I said, 10 o'clock. I went to my room. I did not call a therapist. I called Dr. Simone Hart. Simone was not a family counselor. She was a corporate conflict resolution specialist. She was the woman Omnicore hired when two executives were trying to destroy each other and the company needed a record of who fired the first shot. She was not there to heal feelings. She was there to establish facts. She cost $3,000 for a Sunday session. I paid it instantly. Then I called Nadine Kroll. Nadine was the HOA board president. She was a retired judge with a terrifying reputation for enforcing the bylaws. Nadine, I said, this is Ruby Powell in 44B. I need to file a formal complaint regarding identity fraud and unauthorized access attempts. I heard Nadine put down her tea. Tell me everything. She said, I told her about the forgery. I told her about the burner email. I told her about the harassment. I want the building locked down. I said, I want a directive that no changes can be made to my unit. Occupants, keys, parking, maintenance, without biometric verification. In person. With ID, done, Nadine said. I will alert security immediately. And Ruby, if they try to bypass the desk, call me. I will come down there myself. Thank you. Nadine. Sunday morning arrived with a gray sky. At 9 o'clock, the buzzer rang. I looked at the monitor. It wasn't the mediator. It was my Aunt Linda, and my Uncle Bob, and my cousin Sarah. They were standing in the lobby, looking cheerful. I turned to Elaine. Why are they here? I asked. Elaine looked innocent. I just thought, since we are having a meeting, we should have the whole family. They love you. Ruby, they want to support you. She had called in the cavalry. She wanted to turn the mediation into an intervention. She wanted to fill the room with people who would shame me into submission. Look at your poor mother. Look at your struggling sister. How can you be so selfish? I walked to the intercom. Yes, I said. Ruby, Aunt Linda chirped. We are here. Your mom said you were having a little get-together. I pressed the talk button. I am sorry. Aunt Linda, I said, there is no get-together. This is a private meeting. You cannot come up. There was a silence. Ruby, don't be rude. Uncle Bob's voice boomed. We drove an hour. I am not being rude. I said, I am being clear. I did not invite you. My mother invited you without my permission. You are welcome to wait in the lobby, or you can go to the coffee shop next door. But you are not coming up to the penthouse. Ruby! Elaine screamed from the living room. How dare you! I released the button. I turned to my parents. This is exactly why we need a mediator. I said. Graham stood up. He looked furious. You let them up right now. You do not humiliate us like this. No, I said. Graham took a step toward me. His fists were clenched. You are going to regret this, he said. You are making a scene. I am not making a scene. I said, I am securing my home. I picked up my phone. I held it up. I am recording this, I said. Graham stopped. He looked at the phone. He looked at the camera in the corner. He sat back down. You are cold. He said, you are ice cold. The mediator will be here in 20 minutes. I said, if you want to have the meeting, you will sit there and wait. If you go down to the lobby to let them in, the meeting is canceled, and you can pack your bags. Graham stared at me. He was calculating the odds. He wanted the apartment more than he wanted to save face with his brother. He stayed seated. Elaine texted furiously, presumably telling the relatives that I was having a mental episode and that they should wait. I went into the kitchen. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the glass of water. I felt a crack in my chest, a deep, painful fracture. I was rejecting my entire family. I was turning away my aunt, who had baked me cookies when I was 5. I was threatening my father with police action. I was isolating myself on an island of my own making. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was too rigid, too unfeeling. I looked at the forgery in my purse. I looked at the report from Caleb Rusk. No, I thought, I am not the problem. I am the target. I took a yellow sticky note from the drawer. I wrote on it with a Sharpie. My home is not a negotiation. I stuck it on the refrigerator door. I looked at it. It wasn't a mantra. It was a fact. The buzzer rang again. Ms. Powell, the concierge said. Dr. Simone Hart is here. Send her up, I said. I smoothed my skirt. I walked into the living room. The time for pleading was over. I wasn't going to ask them to respect me. I was going to show them the evidence of their own disrespect. I opened the door. Doctor. Hart stepped in. She was a tall woman with glasses and a briefcase. She looked like she could stare down a hurricane. Good morning, she said. I understand we have a conflict to resolve. I looked at Graham. I looked at Elaine. I looked at Bryn. Yes, I said. We do. I closed the door. The trap was set. Doctor. Simone Hart arrived with the precision of a scalpel. She did not bring a box of tissues. She brought a voice recorder and a legal pad. She sat at the head of my dining table. Her posture so upright it made the rest of us straighten our spines instinctively. My parents and Bryn sat on one side, a united front of aggrieved family values. I sat on the other. Alone. Doctor. Hart placed her hands on the table. Good morning, she said. Her voice was cool, stripped of any maternal warmth. I am here to facilitate a structural conversation regarding the occupancy and boundaries of this property. I am not a therapist. I am not here to validate feelings. I am here to establish facts. Elaine leaned forward, offering a trembling smile. We just want to heal. Doctor, we are a family that loves too much. If anything, we just want our daughter back. Doctor. Hart did not smile back. That leads me to the ground rules, she said. Rule 1. We do not interrupt. Rule 2. When a document is presented, it must be acknowledged before we move on. Rule 3. We will speak in specifics, not generalities. I feel sad is a generality. I forged a signature on Tuesday as a specific. The room went deadly silent. Graham's eyes flicked to me, then back to the mediator. Let's begin. Doctor, Hart said. Ruby, you called this meeting. You have the floor. I took a breath. I had prepared for this. I had treated it like a compliance audit for a failing bank. I had my evidence organized in a binder, tabbed and color-coded. I am asking for a permanent cessation of all attempts to establish residency in Unit 44B. I said, I am asking for the return of all copies of building keys, if any exist, and I am asking for an acknowledgement that the move-in was an orchestrated campaign, not a family emergency. Elaine let out a wounded gasp. Orchestrated? Ruby, how can you use a word like that? We are your parents. We saw your sister in crisis, and we brought her to the only person who could help. We sacrificed our entire weekend to drive her here. She turned to Dr. Hart, tears welling in her eyes on cue. You have to understand, she said, her voice shaking. I gave up my career to raise these girls. I scraped pennies so they could have music lessons, and now, to be treated like invaders? It breaks my heart. I just want them to be safe. She was performing. It was the sacrificial mother monologue, a greatest hit from my childhood. Usually, this was the part where I would apologize and promise to do better. Doctor. Hart wrote something down. Elaine, Doctor, Hart said, looking up. I hear that you feel unappreciated. However, that is a sentiment. Let's look at the logistics. Graham? Graham cleared his throat. He sat back, crossing his arms. He was the pragmatic patriarch now. Look, he said, let's cut the drama. The reality is simple. Bryn needs a place. Ruby has a place. It is a big place. It makes financial sense for everyone if Bryn stays here. He looked at me. We can formalize it. Ruby, I know you like paperwork. We can write up a lease. $0 rent. Obviously, because she is family. But she can cover utilities. It helps you with security. Someone is here when you travel. It helps us because we don't have to worry. It is a win-win. We just need to get her a key and get her name on the mail slot so packages stop getting returned. He was ignoring the no entirely. He was negotiating the terms of my surrender. Doctor. Hart turned to me. Ruby? I opened my binder. It is not a win-win, I said. It is a hostile takeover, and I have the timeline to prove it. I pulled out the first document, the certified copy of the forged occupancy request, on Tuesday, October 28th. I said, keeping my voice steady. This document was submitted to the concierge. It requests full access for Bryn Powell. It bears a signature that purports to be mine. I slid it across the table. Graham stared at it. He didn't touch it. I did not sign this. I said, the concierge confirmed it was dropped off by a man matching Graham's description. Graham waved a hand. That? That was just... I was trying to save you time. You were busy unpacking. I figured I would get the ball rolling. It was administrative assistance, not forgery. Doctor? Hart looked at Graham. Did you sign her name? I signed on her behalf, Graham said. As her father? Without her power of attorney? Doctor, Hart asked. I pulled out the next document, the log from Milo regarding the phone calls. On Wednesday, I continued. A woman called the front desk pretending to be me, asking for a parking pass. She used my mother's maiden name as a security answer. I looked at Bryn, and on Thursday, I said, the HOA welcome packet was emailed to me from a burner address, with loopholes highlighted. Loopholes that would allow a guest to stay indefinitely. Elaine wiped her eyes. We were just doing research. We wanted to make sure you didn't get in trouble with the board. We were protecting you. I pulled out the final piece of paper, a screenshot of Bryn's Instagram story from the night before, the one with the caption, New Beginnings at the Family Penthouse. And this, I said, Bryn is telling the world she lives here. She is soliciting brand deals based on my address. I looked at my sister. You are not looking for a safety net. Bryn, you are looking for a studio. Bryn's face flushed. The scared little sister mask slipped, revealing the anger underneath. You are so obsessed with yourself, she snapped. She turned to Dr. Hart. She has always been like this. She wants to be the victim. She wants to be the poor, lonely girl in the tower so everyone feels sorry for her. Is that why you posted the photo? Doctor? Hart asked. To make her look like a victim? No, Bryn said. I posted it because it is true. It is basically ours anyway. The words hung in the air. Basically ours anyway. Bryn realized she had slipped. She bit her lip. Graham jumped in. She didn't mean that. She just means, family property is shared. We are a collective. Doctor, we don't believe in this mine and yours distinction. Doctor? Hart looked at me. Ruby, you have established a pattern of deception. Graham, you claim this is about family support, but the unauthorized signing of legal documents suggests a different intent. It was just a miscommunication. Graham insisted. He was sweating now, a sheen of perspiration on his forehead. We were rushing. We were panicked about Bryn's situation. Maybe we cut a few corners, but the goal was noble. The goal was business. I said. Graham froze. I reached into the back of the binder. I pulled out the report Caleb Rusk had given me. I traced the email address that sent the HOA packet. I said, it didn't come from a library or a phone. It came from a co-working space in Newark, a space rented by GJP Consulting. I looked at my father. Your consulting firm. Dad, the one that has no website and no clients. Graham's face went gray. I know about the audit. I said, the silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of awkwardness. It was the silence of a bomb that had just been diffused but was still ticking. Elaine stopped crying. Her hands dropped to her lap. She looked at Graham, her eyes wide with fear. What audit? Bryn asked. She looked between them. Dad? What is she talking about? Graham glared at me. His eyes were hate-filled slits. You dug into my business? You spied on me? I did due diligence on the people trying to seize my asset. I said, Doctor? Hart interjected. Ruby, explain the relevance. He needs the address. I said, addressing the mediator. His business is under IRS scrutiny. He needs to show a legitimate physical office to justify his overhead and his consulting fees. A residential address in New Jersey looks like a shell company. A luxury penthouse in Morro Bay looks like a successful satellite office. I turned to Graham. You didn't want Bryn to live here for her sake. I said, you wanted her here to hold the ground. You wanted to put GJP Consulting on the lease or the utility bill. You wanted to wash your audit through my home. Graham stood up. He slammed his hand on the table. That is enough, he shouted. You ungrateful, vicious little... Graham, sit down. Doctor, Hart said. Her voice was like a whip. Graham didn't sit. He leaned over the table, his face purple. You think you are so smart, he snarled. You think you made it? You made nothing. We built you, we carried you, and now you use your fancy investigator to humiliate me? Elaine stood up too, but she wasn't yelling. She was smiling, a cold, razor-sharp smile I hadn't seen since I was 12 years old. You want to talk about records? Ruby? She said softly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. You want to play detective? Elaine continued. Maybe we should tell the good doctor about your records. Maybe we should tell everyone why you really left home, why you are so obsessed with control. She turned to Dr. Hart. Ruby is not well, she said. She has episodes. She forgets things. She invents traumas. We have spent her whole life managing her instability. That is why we handle her paperwork. That is why we are on her emergency contacts, because she cannot be trusted with her own reality. She looked at me with triumph. If you push us, Ruby, I will tell everyone. I will tell your boss. I will tell your neighbors. I will tell them you are a liability. It was the nuclear option, the threat they had held over me for years. You are crazy. You need us. Without us, You will fall apart. I looked at her. I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm of a person who realizes the monster in the closet is just a pile of old coats. Go ahead, I said. Elaine blinked. What? Tell them, I said. Tell them I am unstable. Tell them I hallucinate. I reached into my binder one last time. But if you do, I said, I will show them this. I pulled out a thick stack of medical records. These were not recent. They were old. From my childhood, I requested my full medical history from the state archives 3 months ago. I said, I wanted to understand why I was on so much medication as a teenager, why I was told I had a learning disability when I was getting straight A's. I opened the file. There is no diagnosis. Mom, I said, there never was. The doctor's notes say, over and over again, patient is alert, oriented, intelligent. Mother reports symptoms that are not observed in clinical setting. I looked at Dr. Hart. They medicated me to make me docile. I said, they told me I couldn't handle money, or conflict, or life, so that I would never leave. They created a dependent. I looked at Elaine. I am not unstable. I said, I was gaslighted, and I have the paper trail to prove it. Elaine's face crumbled, not into sadness, but into shock. Her weapon had jammed. Bryn was staring at me. Then she stared at Graham. Is that true? She whispered. About the audit? Graham didn't answer. He was breathing hard, staring at the table. Dad, Bryn said, her voice rising. You told me if I got the address, you would pay off my credit cards. You told me it was a business deal. You didn't tell me it was a crime. She looked at me. He promised me. She said, he said he needed a respectable storyline for the business. He said if I moved in and made it look like a family hub, he could claim the travel expenses and the rent. He said he would give me $5,000 a month. She had turned. The rats were abandoning the ship. So you were a paid actor, I said. I needed the money, Bryn cried. You don't know what it is like, Ruby. I don't have a salary. I have debt. And he said it was easy. He said you were a pushover. Graham roared. Shut up, he screamed at Bryn. Just shut your mouth. He looked at me with pure venom. You think you have won? He spat. You have no one. You are going to rot in this glass box alone. You are an unnatural daughter. Doctor. Hart stood up. She closed her notebook. The meeting is adjourned, she said. Her voice was final. Graham, Elaine, Bryn, Doctor. Hart said, you have admitted to conspiracy to defraud, attempted forgery, and financial coercion. I am a mandatory reporter for certain types of abuse, but right now, I am telling you this as a witness. You need to leave, immediately. Graham looked at her. He looked at me. He saw the camera in the corner. He saw the binder. He realized he had lost the asset. Get your things, he muttered to Elaine. We are not leaving. Elaine shrieked. We are her parents. Move! Graham barked. He grabbed the handle of the luggage cart in the hallway. He shoved it toward the elevator. I stood by the kitchen island. I did not help them. I watched them pack the remaining boxes. It took 10 minutes. They moved with the frantic energy of thieves who had been caught. Elaine paused at the door. She looked at me. Her face was a mask of tragedy. You are dead to us, she hissed. Do not call us when you get sick. Do not call us when you are alone. I won't, I said. Graham didn't look back. He just pushed the button for the elevator. Bryn was the last one. She stopped. She looked at the apartment one last time. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the view she had lost. I could have made you famous. She said, goodbye. Bryn, I said. The elevator doors closed. Doctor. Hart let out a long breath. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. That was substantial, she said. Thank you. Simone, I said, you have enough here for a restraining order, she said. And frankly, a criminal case. I know. I said. She packed up her briefcase. You did well, Ruby. You held the line. She left 5 minutes later. I locked the door behind her. I engaged the deadbolt. I engaged the chain. The penthouse was silent, truly silent. I walked through the rooms. The guest room was empty. The living room was clear. The air felt lighter, as if a heavy smog had been sucked out by the ventilation system. I walked to the console table in the hallway, the one Elaine had been standing near when she arrived, the one where I had found the drawer slightly ajar. I looked at the orchid she had brought. It was sitting there, white and pristine, a gift. I picked it up. It felt heavy. I carried it to the kitchen island. I put it down under the bright pendant lights. I pushed the moss aside. There, taped to the inside of the ceramic pot, was a small black square. It was about the size of a matchbook, a listening device, the kind that recorded to a micro SD card or transmitted over a short range. They hadn't just wanted to live here, they wanted to monitor me. They wanted to catch me slipping, catch me saying something unstable, catch me giving them the ammunition they needed to take control. I didn't scream. I didn't throw it. I went to the drawer and got a Ziploc bag. I used a pair of tongs to pull the device off the ceramic. I dropped it into the bag. I sealed it. I took a Sharpie and wrote on the bag, Exhibit G, surveillance device, recovered Sunday, November 2nd. I walked to my safe. I opened it. I placed the bag on top of the binder, next to the forged document and the medical records. I closed the safe. I spun the dial. I walked to the window and looked out at the ocean. The sun was setting, turning the water the color of a bruise. It wasn't over. Graham was desperate. Desperate men did not just walk away, they escalated. He had threatened legal action. He had threatened my reputation. But I had something he didn't have. I had the truth, and I had the paper. I went to my desk and pulled out a fresh sticky note. I wrote, Phase 1 complete. I stuck it on my monitor. Then I picked up my phone and called Hannah Voss. It is time for the offense, I said. Monday morning felt less like the start of a week and more like the opening arguments of a trial. I stood in the lobby of the police precinct, wearing my darkest suit. Beside me stood Hannah Voss, my attorney. She held a thick manila envelope in her hand. Are you ready? Hannah asked. Once we hand this over, there is no going back. This becomes a matter of public record. I looked at the scuffed linoleum floor. I thought about the forged signature. I thought about the listening device taped inside the orchid. I thought about the way my father had looked at me across the table, his eyes full of calculation and contempt. I am ready, I said. We walked up to the desk. I filed a formal report for identity fraud, forgery in the second degree, and unlawful surveillance. I handed over the USB drive containing the video of Graham at the Dropbox. I handed over the Ziploc bag containing the listening device. I handed over the certified copy of the forged occupancy request. The officer on duty, a tired-looking sergeant, took the packet. He looked at the names. Your father? He asked, raising an eyebrow. I nodded. Yes. He sighed. He stamped the papers. Received. It was a dull sound. Ink on paper, but to me, it sounded like a gavel. From the precinct, we drove straight to the Spire. I went to the management office and placed a copy of the police report on Nadine Kroll's desk. This is the official record. I said, I want this attached to my file. If Graham Powell or anyone associated with him attempts to access the building, this report authorizes you to call the police immediately for trespassing and harassment. Nadine put on her reading glasses. She scanned the report. Her lips thinned into a hard line. We do not tolerate fraud in this building. Nadine said, I am convening an emergency board meeting tonight. We are going to formalize a lifetime ban for your parents. Thank you. Nadine, I went up to my penthouse. I sat in the silence. I waited for the explosion. It did not take long. 2 days later, on Wednesday evening, the buzzer rang. I looked at the monitor. It was Graham. He was alone. He was not carrying luggage this time. He was carrying a briefcase. I did not buzz him in. I called the concierge. David. I said, there is a man in the lobby. He is on the banned list. I know. Ms. Powell, David said, I have already asked him to leave. He says he is here to serve you with legal documents. He says he will not leave until you accept them. Let him leave them with you. I said, he says he needs to deliver them personally. David said, he is making a scene. Ms. Powell. He is shouting about breach of contract. I closed my eyes. He was trying to embarrass me. He knew that if he made enough noise, I would come down just to silence him. I went down. When the elevator doors opened, Graham was standing in the center of the lobby, pointing a finger at David. "You are interfering with a legal process," Graham was shouting. "I have a right to see the defendant." I stepped out. "I am right here," I said. Graham spun around. He looked ragged. His eyes were bloodshot, and his shirt was wrinkled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept since the audit notice arrived. He walked toward me, thrusting a thick envelope at my chest. "You think you are clever?" he spat. "You think filing a police report makes you safe? You just started a war." "Ruby," he shoved the envelope into my hands. "Consider yourself served," he said. I looked at the envelope. It wasn't a court summons. It was a letter from a lawyer. A cheap one, judging by the stationery. "What is this?" I asked. "It is a civil demand," Graham said, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "We are suing you for breach of verbal contract. You agreed to let Bryn live here. We relied on that promise. We incurred costs. We terminated her lease. We paid for movers. You caused financial damages, Ruby, and we are going to sue you for every penny, plus emotional distress." I opened the letter. It was exactly what I expected. A shakedown. It claimed that I had entered into a verbal tenancy agreement and that my capricious revocation had caused irreparable harm to Bryn's livelihood. It demanded $50,000 in settlement. "This is a joke," I said. "The judge won't think so." Graham said, "It is your word against 3 witnesses. Me, Mom, and Bryn. We will all testify that you agreed." He leaned in close. "You want a public record?" he whispered. "We will give you one. We will drag this out in court for years. We will subpoena your financial records. We will make sure your employer knows exactly what kind of person you are. Or," he paused, "or you can drop the police report. Give Bryn the key, and we tear this up." I looked at him. I saw the desperation sweating through his pores. He didn't want to sue me. A lawsuit would expose his finances to discovery. This was a bluff, a loud, terrifying bluff designed to make me fold before the cards were turned over. "Get out of my building," I said. Graham smiled. It was a rictus of hate. "See you in court, daughter." He didn't wait for court. He didn't have the time. The IRS audit was breathing down his neck, and he needed the address now. On Saturday morning, the final assault began. It started with a text from Elaine. "We are coming to get Bryn's things. Please don't make this difficult. We are bringing help." I knew what help meant. It meant an audience. At 10 o'clock, a moving truck pulled up, not a rental this time, a professional crew, and behind them, 2 sedans. I watched from my balcony. Elaine got out, Bryn got out, and then, like a clown car of guilt, my Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob got out, and my cousin Sarah. They gathered on the sidewalk. Elaine was gesturing at the building, looking distraught. Aunt Linda was patting her back. Graham was directing the movers, pointing at the freight entrance. They were staging a spectacle. They were going to try to force their way up by sheer social pressure. Look at the poor family. Look at the cruel daughter locking them out. My phone rang. It was David at the concierge desk. "Ms. Powell," he said, his voice tight. "Your parents are here, with a lot of people. They say they have a moving order. They are demanding access to the freight elevator." I took a deep breath. This was it. If I sent them away, they would scream in the lobby. They would call the news. They would camp out on the sidewalk. I needed to end this, not by pushing them away, but by pulling them in. "David," I said. "Yes?" "Send them up." I said. David paused. "All of them?" "All of them," I said. "The movers can wait in the lobby. But send the family up. Are you sure? Ms. Powell, you have a ban in place? Override it?" I said, "Just for today. And David? Call Nadine. Tell her it is time." I hung up. I walked to the door. I unlocked the deadbolt. I unlocked the chain. I opened the door wide. Then I walked back to the living room and waited. I was not alone. Sitting on my sofa were 3 people: Nadine Kroll, the HOA president, wearing a blazer that looked like armor, Milo Granger, the property manager, holding a tablet, and Sarah, the paralegal from Hannah Voss's office, holding a stenographer's pad. They were my jury and my witnesses. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. They spilled into the foyer like a flood. Elaine led the way, looking righteous and tearful. Graham followed, looking smug. Bryn was behind him, wearing sunglasses. Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob brought up the rear, looking around the penthouse with wide, judgmental eyes. "Ruby!" Aunt Linda cried. "Thank heavens! We were so worried. Your mother said you were having a breakdown." Elaine rushed forward. "Oh, Ruby, thank you for coming to your senses. We didn't want to make a scene, but you left us no choice." Graham walked past me, scouting the room. He saw the 3 people sitting on the sofa. He stopped. "Who are they?" he asked. Elaine stopped too. She looked at Nadine. She looked at Milo. I stood by the kitchen island. "Please, come in," I said. "Close the door." Uncle Bob. Bob closed the door. "This is an intervention, isn't it?" Aunt Linda whispered loudly to Sarah. "It is so brave of you to help." "No. Linda," I said, "it is not an intervention. It is a deposition." Graham stiffened. "What is this? Ruby?" I gestured to the sofa. "This is Nadine Kroll, the president of the HOA board." I said, "This is Milo Granger, the building manager. And this is Sarah, a witness for my legal counsel." Elaine laughed nervously. "Why are they here? We are just moving Bryn in. We don't need an audience. You do?" "Actually," I said, "because everything that happens in this room from this moment forward is being witnessed, recorded, and transcribed." I walked to the coffee table. I picked up the binder. "You came here to shame me." I said, "You brought the family to witness how cruel I am. You wanted to bully me into submission with witnesses. So I invited witnesses too." I opened the binder. Nadine stood up. She did not look like a sympathetic neighbor. She looked like the judge she used to be. "Mr. and Mrs. Powell," Nadine said. Her voice was granite. "You are currently trespassing on private property. Ms. Powell has invited you up for the sole purpose of delivering a formal notice." Graham scoffed. "Trespassing? My daughter invited us. We have a verbal contract." "There is no contract." I said. I picked up the civil demand letter Graham had served me. "You claimed damages." I said, "You claimed I agreed to this. You claimed I am causing you financial ruin." I looked at Bryn, but the truth is, you are not here for a home. You are here for a hideout. I turned to the TV screen mounted on the wall. I picked up a remote. "I want you to hear something," I said. I pressed play. The audio was clear. It was from the Sunday meeting, captured by the camera I had legally installed in the common area. Graham's voice filled the room. "I need a respectable storyline. If she moves in, I can claim the rent. I can wash the audit through the address. It looks clean." Bryn's voice. "You promised me $5,000 a month if I secured the address." Graham's voice. "Just get the key. Once we are in, she can't get us out." I pressed pause. The silence in the penthouse was absolute. Aunt Linda looked at Graham. Her mouth was open. Uncle Bob looked at his shoes. Bryn was frozen. She was staring at the speaker. She hadn't heard that part of the conversation. She had only heard the promise of money. She hadn't heard him say, "Wash the audit." Elaine tried to recover. "That is taken out of context. We were joking. It was a hypothetical." Nadine stepped forward. "Mr. Powell," she said, "based on that recording, and the forged documents Ms. Powell has provided, the Homeowners Association has voted to pursue criminal charges for attempted fraud against the building." Graham's face went pale. "Charges? You submitted a forged government document to our staff." Nadine said, "You attempted to gain unauthorized access to our security servers. We have blacklisted your name, your wife's name, and your daughter's name from this building permanently. We have also notified the other luxury buildings in Marrow Bay. You will not be renting anywhere in this city." Graham looked at me. His eyes were wild. "You did this?" he hissed. You destroyed our reputation? You did it yourself. I said, I just turned the lights on. I looked at Bryn. She was taking off her sunglasses. Her hands were shaking. You knew? She whispered to Graham. You knew it was a crime? You told me it was just accounting. You told me it was a loophole. Graham didn't look at her. He was looking at the exit. You used me, Bryn said. Her voice broke. It wasn't a neat movie star cry. It was ugly. It was the sound of a 27-year-old realizing she was just collateral damage. You told me I was helping the family. Bryn sobbed. You told me I was saving the business, but you were just using me to hide your money. Graham turned on her. Oh, stop it, he snapped. You wanted this. You wanted the penthouse. You wanted the photos. Don't act like a saint. You are just as greedy as the rest of us. Bryn flinched as if he had hit her. She looked at me. I did want it, she said. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. I wanted it so bad. I hate that you have it. I hate that you made it and I didn't. I wanted to come in here and take it and make it mine, so I didn't feel like such a loser. She looked at the floor, but I didn't know about the audit. I didn't know I was going to jail for it. It was the most honest thing she had ever said. Elaine stepped in. She grabbed Graham's arm. Graham, we have to go, she whispered. If they call the police. Graham shook her off. He walked up to me. He was close enough that I could smell his sweat. He leaned down. His voice was a low growl. You think you are safe because you have witnesses? He said. You think a piece of paper protects you? You are my daughter. I know where you came from. I know your secrets. He smiled. It was chilling. You will regret making enemies of your own blood. Ruby, we still have the leverage. We still have the history. You can't erase us. I looked him in the eye. I didn't blink. I am not trying to erase you. Dad, I said, I am evicting you. And as for leverage? I added. I picked up one last document from the table. It was fresh. The ink was barely dry. I transferred the deed yesterday. I said, Graham frowned. What? This penthouse is no longer owned by Ruby Powell, I said. It is owned by the RP Irrevocable Trust. I held up the paper. I am just the tenant now. I explained. The trust owns the asset, and the trust documents specifically state that no family member, no heir, and no creditor of any relative can ever reside in, attach, or claim this property. I smiled. Even if you sue me, I said, even if you win, you can't touch the house. It is locked away in a vault you do not have the combination for. Graham stared at the paper. He understood what it meant. He understood that the shell company scheme was dead. He understood that the asset was gone. He looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only the cold assessment of a predator who realizes the prey has escaped. Let's go, he said to Elaine. He turned and walked out. He didn't wait for her. Elaine looked at me. She looked at Aunt Linda. She looked at the beautiful ocean view. You are a cold woman. Ruby, she whispered, you will die alone in this glass box. Better alone than eaten alive. I said, she left. Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob hurried after her, muttering apologies to the air. Bryn was the last to leave. She stood by the door. She looked at me. I am sorry, she said, but I meant what I said. I still hate you a little bit. I know. I said. She nodded. Goodbye. Ruby. She walked out. The door clicked shut. Nadine let out a long breath. Well, she said, that was efficient. Milo stood up. I will tell the concierge to clear the moving truck. Sarah closed her notepad. We have everything we need. Ms. Powell, the transcript will be ready tomorrow. Thank you. I said, thank you all. They left, one by one. When the apartment was finally empty, I locked the door. I threw the deadbolt. I latched the chain. I walked to the window. I watched the moving truck pull away from the curb. I watched the two sedans follow it, disappearing into the traffic of Marrow Bay. I was alone. The silence was different this time. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't waiting for anything. It was just silence. I walked to the kitchen. I picked up the sticky note I had written on Sunday. My home is not a negotiation. I took it off the fridge. I crumpled it up. I didn't need the reminder anymore. I went to the safe in my closet. I opened it. I looked at the evidence, the forged form, the listening device, the medical records. I didn't need to look at them every day, but I wouldn't throw them away. They were my history. They were the proof that I had survived. I closed the safe. I walked back to the living room. The sun was setting, casting a gold light across the floor. Elaine was wrong. I wasn't in a glass box. I was in a lighthouse. And for the first time in 33 years, the keeper was the only one with the key. I sat down on my sofa. I put my feet up. I closed my eyes and listened to the ocean. It sounded like victory. Thank you so much for listening to Ruby's story. It was a long journey from the lobby to the final lock of that door. And I hope you felt every moment of it. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please leave a comment below and tell me which country or city you call home. And if you enjoyed seeing Ruby take her power back, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of justice and family drama waiting for you. What did you think of Ruby's final move with the trust? Was it too cold? Or was it exactly what they deserved? Share your thoughts in English in the comments. I read every single one. Stay safe, and remember, protect your peace.